with the document, what I would say in terms of preparing it, so we know what it is, it's an optional piece that we can bring in. And remember, you don't have to do this, but if you're feeling really nervous, it can be really good for that. And I want to look at the 3 P's that come with preparing a document. Okay, so what I would say then is, let me just knock all of these onto the floor before I look at them. The 3 P's are key when we come to kind of preparing the document. So the first one is pick a good topic. The second one is prepare really well. And the last one there is preempt the questions that you might be asked. This, I think, is really key for, I suppose, any area within the oral, because whatever you say, they can ask you questions on what you've just said, you know what I mean? So if you turn around and you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm a vegetarian, they could be like, oh, why? Do you care about the environment? So you don't want to back yourself into that corner of not being able to answer because you mentioned something that you didn't preempt a question for, okay? So it kind of says here, like there's a lot of notes there on picking a good topic. You want to pick something that is interesting, okay? That is personal. I suppose at this point of the year, what we'd say is that you want to overlap vocab with what you've already prepped, and you want it to be open-ended. Now, by open-ended, I don't mean that it has to be something that's so broad that they can ask anything, but if you say, voici une photo de ma famille et moi en vacances en Espagne, this is a picture of me and my family on holiday in Spain, what can they actually ask you? You know what I mean? Like, you have to remember that it's supposed to be like a diving board for more conversation. So if you say, oui, nous sommes en vacances, c'était super, on aime bien la plage, we like the beach. What else is there to say to that? The only questions they can ask you are more difficult questions like, oh, do you think like travel is bad for the environment? And, you know, would you consider a staycation or something like that, okay? If you have maybe like a holiday home or have been on this like wild holiday that was somewhere that people don't tend to go, that's different. It's not just you on a beach holiday with your family in Salou. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen really interesting ones about a trip to Kenya, or someone went to Israel. Like, someone was like, this is my holiday house. This is, you know, where my family lives in Canada and we go and visit them every year. That's different, do you know what I mean? Because you could talk about different lifestyles, or you can talk about like how your family has a different, even culture, you know, that kind of way, or, you know, the differences and similarities that you noticed living with people who live somewhere else. It's rather than being like, oh, you know, tell me about the restaurant that you went to every evening that was in your complex. That's different to tell me about the things you learned about the people when you were on this trip to somewhere that people don't tend to go. A lot of, now it's gonna sound sexist, but a lot of lads predominantly tend to talk about GA. That's fine. What I would say is, if you're going to talk about a sport or a hobby, make sure that you pick an event linked to the hobby. So a match in particular. Or if you, I don't know, I suppose it's really unfair to say that about lads and GA. Like, a lot of people talk about dance or, you know, hockey or whatever their hobby is. You are already going to talk about your pastimes, you know what I mean? In the oral, you do have a slot to talk about, this is what I do at the weekend, this is what I do with my friends. If you are going to speak about, I play hockey with a team, we meet 3 times a week, we train, whatever, you're wasting time by preparing that again for the document. You know, like, you're not adding anything to what you've already said by talking about it again. And that means, again, that the questions you're going to get are going to be difficult because you've already had that conversation with the examiner. So if you prepare something on an event or a competition, or, you know, a lot of people travel with hobbies. So if you've gone to another country, that's slightly different, you know, that kind of way. Some really, really nice ones that I've seen have been something like, a couple of years ago, I saw a girl who had, it was a French band that I had never heard of. And what was nice is that they were just niche enough that I couldn't be like, yeah, I've heard of them. Tell me, did you like this album? You know? So if you can have something that is, I want to say like a bit younger than what the examiner will know, they're going to be able to ask you less about it. Like, you don't want to go in with, I don't know, a picture of Vanessa Paradis singing Joe Le Taxi, because they're going to know what that is. And they're going to say, oh, remember when she was married to Johnny Depp, tell me about that. Like, what do you think about celeb marriages? You want it to be as vague as possible, while also giving you plenty to talk about. So if you talk about a band that you think that someone might not know, that's, you know, that's great. I would say try and keep it linked to French in some way if it's not a trip, because otherwise
you're just talking about your favorite band. It also kind of gives you a lot to talk about with concerts. You can link it back to le petit boulot, like your part-time job, and all of this kind of idea. The last thing that I wanted to say there is a topic that a lot of people pick is maybe a school tour or TY or something like that. Goshka I see a lot of the time as well. That's great, and obviously that is something that you can talk a lot about. You can talk about the experience itself, the friends you made, what you did, where you went, I suppose the advantages that you gained from that, and you can talk about maybe the system itself, but you need to make sure that you make it as personal to you as possible, because you are not the only person that did TY, you know what I mean? You are not the only person that went on a school tour. There could be 10 other people that are preparing that document, which isn't an issue, but you need to make sure that yours is different to everybody else's, okay? And that's what we're talking about when we say, like, pick a good topic. You need to pick a topic that, even if somebody else does it, that you are kind of approaching it in a way that is making yours the best. So again, when we get to kind of the next P there is prepare. So the presentation of the document itself is a point de départ. It's a departure point for a conversation on the topic. So you need to prepare what you're going to say really, really well, okay? I suppose you want to talk or think about the way you're going to present. Are you going to have a montage? Are you going to have like one picture that you bring in? Are you going to have, you know, we said you can bring in like a literary text, a poster, all of this. I would say avoid a text because it's too much writing. And if you're bringing in, like a couple of years ago, I saw someone who did des manifestations à Paris liées au changement climatique. So do you remember there were all of the climate crisis protests? I think it was like the Fridays for Future, all of this kind of thing. But a lot of the signs were in English. I would avoid it where possible, just because you want it to be as French centric as possible. So the way you're going to present, exactly what you're going to say. And this kind of ties into the next point, because you want to think about what you're going to say, and not say, okay? So this is important, because if you don't mention something, you could be asked on that. That could be the question that they bring in. Like, remember, this isn't just a presentation and then you leave it there. You give the presentation and then the examiner asks you questions on what you've prepared. So if you talk about a school tour or TY, and you say, oh, nous sommes allés en France, on a passé 2 semaines dans les Alpes, c'était super, on a visité Paris, on a vu la Tour Eiffel, all of this kind of stuff. Maybe don't mention food. And then they're going to ask you, oh, so what is it you ate while you were there? You know what I mean? Like, leave a bit of a blank. That would be a very obvious question. You need to preempt the questions you're going to get. So think about what questions you might be asked. But essentially using this step of pick a good topic, prepare exactly what you're going to talk about, and then preempt the questions you will get, or you might get. That's how you can put together your own document that's going to be really, really sort of beneficial to you. It's the best way to do it is to follow these 3 steps. That mean that when you go in, you already know you've examined it from every angle about what the examiner can say to you. And it means that when you sit down and you present and you've kind of prepared it so well that you know it off by heart, and you come in and you say it really confidently, like a really, you know, well put together presentation, that the questions you get, you're already, you know, you're like, oh, I expected that question. That's a question that I'm not surprised to have gotten. That's where you're going to get the most marks, okay? Remember, it's an optional piece, so it doesn't add or take away marks by not doing it. So you have to just make sure that it improves the French that you're already using. En ce qui concerne le document, c'est tout. Okay, that's everything we're going to have a look at the document, or that's everything we're going to look at regarding the document. I think, like, you know, there's not a whole lot more to it. It's a really good tool for someone who's really, really nervous. Again, you don't want to overlap it too much with what you're already going to talk about. So you don't want to talk about a hobby if you're already going to speak about it, because you're taking away from the actual conversation. It's supposed to add to what you say in the oral rather than take anything away from what you might have the conversation about. So imagine, if I didn't do this document, would I talk about this topic anyway? If the answer is yes, either make it more specific or change it entirely, okay? Again, you have to think, if I talk about, I don't know, one of my favorite hobbies, or like something that I care about, or something that is a problem in the world, am I going to get questions that are too difficult for me to answer? If the answer is yes, you need to change your topic. Okay, ça c'est tout pour le document. That's everything for the document, so we can take that off.